Discussions about security in Nigeria is not a one-day conversation. Yesterday, we looked at the worrying attack on the country's railway within 24 hours and the response of security agencies and the government. The number of those kidnapped is unknown, and survivors are still in a state of shock as to what they witnessed. While still reeling from the news, reports emerged that a major road in Kaduna was under siege by terrorists, with motorists having to hide in the face of sporadic gunshots. A game that was supposed to entertain and unite the people turned violent. It has been a difficult few days for the country, especially its people. Welcome to VSA. I am Felicity Ezewuike. Nigerians were thrown into a state of dejection as news went round about an attack on an Abuja-Kaduna train. Explosive devices employed by terrorists were used to destroy the tracks, halt the train, and attack passengers. Some of whom died, while others sustained injuries. This attack was not the first. There was an attack in October 2021, and there had been warning about potential attacks since 2019. Nigeria's Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amechi, said after the attack that they needed digital equipment to monitor every train moving on tracks, but they were denied access to funds. He said what the ministry asked for was 3 billion naira, but the costs incurred as a result of the attack is much more than they had asked for. The issue again suggests the bureaucratic bottlenecks affecting Nigeria's security networks. Barely a day after the train attack, terrorists attacked travelers on a major road in Kaduna State, with details of casualties still sketchy. While terrorists killed and maimed, football fans went wild in Abuja. For today's conversation, I have Umar Aliyu. He's a security expert, and pretty much later we'll have Biola Kazeem, a sports marketing consultant. He'll be joining me for this conversation as well. Welcome, Captain Aliyu.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. More names are emerging and more deaths are being recorded from the train attack. I mean, how does Nigeria keep missing out on intelligence?
Intelligence itself, you have to agree, has to be handled by intelligent people. Our law enforcement agencies are working around the clock. Our military is working around the clock. But then when intelligence is not handled by people who are intelligent enough to make discerning deductions from intelligence, then all of that which intelligence stands to afford you goes to waste, amounts to zero. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is this. 100 men on motorbikes cannot ride through any inch of Nigerian soil today undetected. For crying out loud, if all of what we have been imploring Mr. President to do hasn't reached him, then certainly he needs to take a good look around who his handlers are. He needs to take a good look around who his advisors are. And let me rub it in now. You see, if a man walks up to me right now with a bag of rice and asks for votes, I'll tell you I'm looking at a thief, a man who wants to steal my mandate. Can we now begin, in light of what I've said about intelligence, look at that man who will stand up in our hallowed chambers tomorrow to negotiate for rehabilitation, reabsorption, reintegration, and even a pension plan for terrorists as their benefactors and the sole saboteurs of the intelligence we need to nip our problems in the bud? I'm just thinking aloud.
There is something worrying about the fact that analysts like yourself, experts, consultants who have been in the space for a while within Nigeria and across board, I have two consultants as well yesterday talking on the issue of intelligence. What is it that this administration is missing? They keep promising that something is going to happen, but they just have just about a year to go. Do you expect to see that something different will be done in the space of time left? Or, I mean, the situation is going to be carried on to the next administration?
I don't see any miracle happening about this situation overnight, particularly in this present dispensation. And the reason is straightforward, simple. If you recall, at a point in time, we analyzed on this same platform a national security architecture plan that was released by the NSA, General Monguno. And I sounded somewhat acerbic, or I was actually called a whaler then. That was the trending word. We were called naysayers and whalers. I said, you know what? The National Security Architecture Plan, let's have this conversation 1 year from today. So what happened to the architecture plan? What I'm trying to tell you about intelligence is sitting at the top of our intelligence community is a national security advisor. How come he's so silent these few days? Or am I deaf? Maybe I'm tone deaf. I'm not hearing his voice. So what I'm trying to tell you is this. There is much help, but until we stop coming across as intimidators, or maybe even naysayers, to those who direly need help, there is not much intelligence can do for you. So as I said, you see, intelligence has to be handled by an intelligent person, or else you won't use it well.
Intelligence is key in this conversation, but there are other aspects as well. This country has spent more than 4 trillion naira on security in 7 years. Do you think that investment has been of much benefit in this fight?
The benefits, as much as 4 trillion has been spent, I can tell you that the benefits are always overtaken by what I want to call, some kind of lethargy and some kind of, non-cost effective choices we make. I recall the Honorable Minister Rotimi Amechi saying something about having saved 3 billion to lose an entire train. So you see, it becomes some kind of comic thing. Sometimes when I hear these things, I used to wonder, no, maybe I'm crazy. Something was wrong with me. Why would I be finding this money? Why save 3 billion and lose God knows what the train costs, God knows what the human material and other collateral effects of that attack would have cost. God knows what economic benefits we have lost in whoever has passed on. If you look at the cost of that derailment, immediate, mid-term, and long run, you find that the 3 billion was quite a small amount to pay to get the necessary equipment that would have put every other thing we've mentioned about now, that would have saved all of that for us. But then it's all in
of transportation. If he believes that that amount would have done something, why do you think the government, because now he's coming to say, see, I told you, if you've given me this money, we wouldn't have this scenario. So why is it that the government did not give him that money to do what he needed to do? And now we can't say, Mr. Rotimi Amechi, you asked for this. Why are we having this situation? And to add to that, is there any sort of surveillance from your knowledge on any of these axes that we have railway across the country?
There is a lot of surveillance, and there is also much more that needs to be, applied. For crying out loud, I have personally sent a very cost-effective, virtually free, self-driven surveillance device across to governors, I've sent to traditional rulers, I've sent to chieftains in the armed forces. And I do not just understand, it's baffling when you are actually reaching over to give help to someone and he's falling shy of taking it, probably because the body language of his commander in chief will not be too receptive of this device. Let me talk about this device for the sake of our citizens. So probably we'll start asking pointedly for it on the streets everywhere, and then probably that will bring it. Felicity, if you were to be a tourist, I'm sure you would know what a hot air balloon is. There is this device we call a hot air balloon, and what I recommended is just a glorified hot air balloon. It works with helium, so you don't even need fuel. So no trains or anything need to break down or run out of fuel, since we do have fuel shortages. And this device can carry as much as 200 to 250 pounds of surveillance equipment. And once you take that surveillance up on helium, if you know what helium is, you should. Mothers normally have balloons that fly and stand straight during birthdays for our children. That balloon is helium fed. So if you put helium into this very monstrous balloon and you send it right up over your location, it gives you a 100 kilometers radius visibility. And so you can imagine you triangulating that balloon. If you had one right here in Lekki, you will see as far as Ijebu. Oh yes. So if you had one in Lekki, one in Ijebu, and you formed a triangle, you probably see far into the Atlantic Ocean. So what that gives you in essence is it strikes the fear into those who already are scaring us. We're going to use fear against them. The reason is simple. If I were to handle that balloon, from the moment those guys left their hideout, up and up to when they got to the train rail lines, up and up to when they went back, it's recorded. It's recorded, and it's actually transmitted live to a reception center, a control room of sorts, if you like. And the car can be moved, the car that hoists the balloon. And that balloon can go 3,500 max feet or meters, if you like, above the ground. So you can imagine from 3,500 meters with geothermal cameras, with FLIR-enabled cameras. I told you it can carry about 200 kilograms worth of camera. So you can imagine that balloon will lift me and you probably, and maybe will add for Lami.
So, I want to believe our problem is not funds. I want to truly believe that Nigeria's problem is not getting the money to get what they need. But would it be maybe a question of the hands that are responsible? You talked earlier about those that he is putting in charge. They are not committed. Is it a question of experience more than commitment? Because one thing you'll tell you we're doing our best. You have people there who have been in the security forces for donkey years, yet ideas like this are not exploited. Is it a lack of experience? Because if it is willingness, people are going out there and they're dying every day trying to save the motherland.
Indeed, it is not a lack of experience per se. Don't forget, our Nigerian armed forces, particularly my beloved army, we export talents. Yes, it's not about experience. We export talents. We have sons and daughters of the Nigerian army who are going out there and doing wonderfully well. They top their classes whenever they go on courses. What is actually happening is there is this very, very misconstrued perception of loyalty. In fact, it's so misconstrued, it's cult-like. Okay, so when you talk loyalty within our clients, most people believe that to be loyal is just to put your brain on aircraft mode or something like that and refuse to think. And that's what the leader wants. Most people use that to worm their way into, the immediate space of our leaders. Immediate space means they are the closest. I know people who are as close to our leaders as my ear is to my head, who actually wormed their way in, not because they know what they're doing, just because they're loyal. And I recall one of our politicians a few days ago said, loyalty is everything. So just be loyal and every other thing will be added
Loyalty,
on to
is it
you.
not a beautiful word for sycophancy? Because if you're saying somebody is loyal, the person can be loyal and still do the job that they are meant to do. I think if the person is
Well,
loyal and doing the job that they are meant to do, respect will amplify. But if you are loyal and you're a sycophant, pleasing the person who is the leader, then the question would be, does Nigeria have any leader truly? Because there was so much expectation when this administration came in, and you're looking at the crop of people that we have in the political scene. Do you think there is any leader in this country that will come and put away that sycophancy that you said is almost a cult, and do
okay,
something truly?
yes, of course there is. But before I dwell on the leadership aspect, let me talk to you a bit more on loyalty.
Go ahead.
You see, loyalty is a wonderful thing, but not loyalty to humans, loyalty to our constitution. If I was in position, either as the NSA, to advise my president, I'll make him understand that we are not going to be loyal to you because me and you will come and go. You know, in my religion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says everyone must taste of death. So there's a time to live and a time to die. But our constitution will ever remain, even for generations unborn, to come together and continue to, the constitution is work in process. Our constitution is something that can be upgraded. So loyalty to the constitution will be more like it. Then let's talk about leadership. From what I have experienced, and that it's, I've paid dearly for that. What I'm telling you is, we don't have leaders; we have godfathers. And for people like me who really did not believe in godfatherism and was always that stray, adventurous young kid, right from when I was a young officer, who wants to go out and do things on his own, not kowtowing to a godfather, who will be seen in these climes as rebellious. What we seek, what we need are leaders, even mentors, if you like. And there's a difference between a leader and a godfather, and I'll tell you the difference. You see, a godfather has you sit by his feet and learn sitting right there. You don't stand up. The day you try to stand, he'll cut your legs off. He will do the standing and see and give you crumbs of whatever he's able to get as your reward for working for him. If you want to understand godfatherism very well, look to the Italian mafiosi or the Sicilian mafiosi. You will see godfatherism at work there. Just be loyal and we'll take care of every other thing you need. Now, a mentor or a leader is the converse. How converse?
But
A
let
mentor,
me let
or,
me let me interject a bit here. You talk
yes,
about godfatherism and the negatives of it as compared to a leader. Even other societies, some of these things still operate, and that is why we have systems. So if we don't have the leaders to build the system, is it maybe a possible line of thought for the people who are in power, even if it is to be of eye service, to have a national conversation, maybe something like what we had in 2014 during the Goodluck Jonathan time, have a national dialogue on how we want our security system to be in this country? Because it doesn't seem like all the strategies that are being put in place is working well enough.
indeed, a national dialogue wouldn't be out of place. I want to see that day. I live for that day. It's my heart song. To see that day where we threw the windows and the doors at the center open and say, you know what? Come on, come on, come in with your differences. Okay. We don't need to understand our differences. That's old school. We need to be able to live with our differences. Let the man who wants to stand on his head come. Let the man who wants to stand on his feet come. Let us sit down and exchange values and ideas. That's what we need. And you need a leader to do that, not a godfather. You need someone who is ready to be what you call a servant leader, not a boss leader. There are two
Do we
different.
have them in this country? Because one thing is to say we have godfathers. These godfathers, they like the feeling of power that they have. If we have true leaders, one of the tests is a willingness to sacrifice for the people. So isn't it? Do you think we have people like that really that will put these godfathers, put them in what was what I'm looking for now, get into competition with them and pull back the power? Do we have them in this country? And what is stopping them from stepping up? Because every day people die.
We do have them in this country, but I must also tell you quite sincerely again that those of them who will step up to do this job must understand something. In the immediate and probably middle term, they may even be disowned by their kids and kin. The reason is because we already have our appetites, we're used to certain ways of doing things. Take, for example, if Captain Blade today is pronounced an advisor or a member of a certain cabinet, I trust I have relatives who will come with very deep bowls and long spoons and expect to be fed from the coffers of the office in which I serve. And they are in for a disappointment. Because if I don't do it, then our great grandchildren will curse us. I'd rather disappoint uncles and aunties and have history be kind to me than have them eat our tomorrow, our next tomorrow, and our 20 generations away today. So we have leaders, we have the capacity to do it. But trust me, it's going to be as painful as it will be quite testing.
I'm sure a lot of
Very
Nigerians
testing.
will share some optimism that they are willing to go the mile needed to get this country back to the people. Let's go back to the conversation around intelligence gathering. You are an expert in this area. Please talk to us about the bodies that are responsible. What comes to mind quickly is the DSS, responsible for intelligence gathering, making sure that this is disseminated across board. Who are they? Where are they lacking? Because what we heard from the situation that happened day before yesterday and yesterday with the Kaduna Abuja rail, the security agencies got their information off social media.
Yes, indeed. You see, the DSS particularly are doing some wonderful work. I was on a program today with a station in Kaduna State where another captain, Aliyu Abdurrahman, was speaking. This officer is chief security officer to the governor of Kano State. We were all military intelligence officers who were never given a chance to do nothing because we were considered godfatherless renegades, if you can put it that way. Listen, have you ever wondered why the terrorists and the insurgents and whatever haven't gone to Kano? Or is Kano, Kaduna, Jigawa not on the same axis? In fact, Kano has borderlines with countries that we know these terrorists come from. Have you ever bothered to wonder why that is not happening?
Give us an idea. I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will be interested to know.
Beautiful. That's because the chief security officer, who is working with His Excellency Governor Ganduje, has a very discerning and cunning intelligence machinery in place. Listen, Felicity, with all due respect to people, gender now, I'm not a gender chauvinist, I'm not a female chauvinist. We have prostitutes who service these jokers, and they are also agents. They are intelligence assets. We have vulcanizers who repair their bikes. They are intelligence assets. Okay? They're in love with bikes, or are they not? When their bikes have a flat tire, they don't use their mouths to pump the tire. They look for. And other than that, we also have just think about it. It's about creativity, it's about innovation, it's about metacognition. So, as I told you about intelligence earlier on, if you want intelligence and you are not intelligent, you won't get it. If you have intelligence and you are not intelligent, you can't use it. So think about it, food for thought.
Yeah, but I wanted to go somewhere else, but I just want to touch on what you said now about ordinary people, artisans being part of this network.
Indeed.
Don't you think that is affected by a sense of a lack of commitment from the government towards their welfare? Because oftentimes you see people who lay down their lives, you hear they're dead and a lot doesn't happen for their family. Is it a question of distrust? The fact that the information, it's common knowledge among a lot of Nigerians that they are afraid to give information to the police, for instance. So if it is working there, what is it that they are doing different that is making these artisans to be a bit more committed to the process of sharing information that is vital for the security?
That particular question you have asked is key. I tell you for a free that a government that is so miserly, it won't spend 3 billion to secure an entire rail line, is not likely the kind of government that will give the basic requirements or necessities to its citizens. And don't forget that mastermind, that terror mastermind sitting there is going to look at this and exploit it. So where you are penny wise and pounds foolish, he will go to your citizens and become pound wise and penny shy. So where he knows that the government is lacking, he fills in and provides. And of course, if people find it easier to get a decent meal from the man who threatens their life but gives them food to eat, even if the people don't like him, there must be some Judases. Let's assume for every 100 people you have, or for every 12, there is a Judas. Then imagine a community of 250,000 people. You can imagine how many Judas we will have there. And that's already enough to form an army of 100 bikers with their weapons to come and fight. So that's my own take on what is happening. And, anytime we see certain projects that are not even useful being executed, we hear billions being quoted. And then when you see small little solutions that are meant to secure the projects that are being executed, there is no money, there's paucity of funds.
It is quite worrying indeed. It is.
Yeah.
Staying off what you said about what's happening in Kano, and I think you mentioned Kaduna, right? Yes. I want to bring a particular question up here, and it has to do with these areas: Katari, Rijana, Jere, Kasarani. I don't know if I'm getting those names correctly.
You're talking of Katari, yes. Rijana, Lere.
Exactly. Why is that circle a hot spot for bandit attack, repeated bandit attack? You're quite familiar with what happens around that area.
Okay, you have to look at it this way. You see, when you plan an ambush, this is tactical now. There has to be a conducive, place where you will, what we call, spring the ambush. For you or the average listener to be able to understand it, you discover that if on the Lekki Epe axis you were to wait for someone, the chances are he must cross one traffic light to reach the other. Yes, we know there are feeder routes. What I'm trying to tell you is that the Lekki Epe axis has some toll points. Okay. Now that toll point canalizes the movements of vehicles. So long as you want to use that Lekki Epe Express, you must pass through that toll point. So that's what happens when these bad people plan their ambush. They're going to wait for their target in a geographical place where they know it has the least chances of survival. Ambushes on roads, for example, not rails, can come where you have a lot of potholes at sharp bends. Okay, you could just take a sharp bend and you walk straight on into an ambush. The ambush could be first of all in form of mines. That mines will start to the victim, and before he recovers and knows what is happening, the killer group moves in.
I
So
sincerely hope
basically,
that,
what
yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
Basically, so what you saw was those bandits. What they did was to go to a particular location where there were, like two embankments on each side of the rail tracks. Okay, those embankments were man-made embankments, I believe, that were meant to support the landscape there. And that was where they started from. Up there. They set up the explosive, and immediately the explosive was able to stop the target. That's the main job of that explosive was to stop that train moving, because it's easier to hit a static target than a moving target. And the moment they derailed it, they knew that there will be no movement for that particular that particular set of coaches. And then they started shooting and descending from their hideouts and coming down to wreak mayhem on those poor people until our armed forces scrambled to that place to their rescue.
All right. I'm hoping we can get to talk a bit security-wise as we progress towards the election, because, like it or not, politics is very important when we talk about the security of the people. But for now, I'd like you to speak on what the military can do. You've highlighted, I mean, somebody that is in the security environment would know these things that you just explained to us. I hope people watching have taken clue from it to protect themselves, because at this stage you have to protect yourself. So if people have this information and they're not using it, what would you be advising Nigerians to tell this military in their response to the insecurity across the country? What can they do
Can
to
you
improve?
can you take that question again? It was you were breaking. I didn't quite get all of it.
Okay, I'm trying to get your response to um, advising the military, basically, on ways they can improve on their response to emergencies across the country. Because what you just explained now is something that I'm sure can be worked on, and people can still be protected while using those areas.
Yes, indeed. As I said, the military has the capacity, the ability, the experience to do what needs to be done to secure those rail lines. The challenge now is, will they be funded and provided with the equipments and the right paraphernalia to do a yeoman's job? Okay? There is no gainsaying. If I had my way, I'll just give the chief of army staff a little time, cock my ears and close my eyes. And I'm telling you, within just 30 days, anything you hear the army doing to bandits, just pretend you are not seeing, and you'll see what happens. But what I'm saying is, peacekeeping, okay, is the worst form of peace enforcement. I'm going into peacekeeping probably so that my brothers listening will understand. The army is constrained. When you call him and say, you know what, diplomacy has failed, uh, and all those things, rehabilitation and what have you has failed, go and clean this thing out. Then you now said, no, you know what, if you have to clean this thing out, you must not have this, we can't give you this. It doesn't work that way. If you want soldiers to handle these people, for God's sake, don't call soldiers anything other than soldiers. A soldier's job is not to come and diplomatic or to rehabilitate or no. His job is to come there and clean it out.
Exactly.
So I have
Right.
no doubt that these soldiers can do it. But when you bring the politics and the all those things in the whole process, just
Follow job description basically, and allow politics to be politics while the military do their thing.
the
Thank you.
soldier, listen, our soldiers are actually, let me tell you, the soldier lives, dies, thinks, eats, sleeps, death. He's
Yeah.
at home with it. That's his way of life, dying. Then you bring him and start telling him, listen, don't kill. What exactly is dying if not killing?
I'm afraid we'll just
He
have
himself.
to. Yeah, I'm afraid we'll just have to leave this conversation. I'm sure we'll continue. Sulai will be back soon. A conversation on security will definitely continue on Village Square Africa. I want to thank you very much, Captain Umar Aliyu, for speaking with us.
Same here. Have a great evening.
Right, we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll be introducing a sports marketing consultant, that's Biola Kazeem, to speak on the situation that we all witnessed with the Nigeria-Ghana games. Stay with us. Security problems have spread around the country, and there seems to be no clear solution in sight. From roads to air and rail tracks to stadium in Abuja yesterday, where fans were seen desecrating national property and also attacking players and officials. The Super Eagles played out a 1-1 draw against Ghana at the recently revamped Moshood Biola National Stadium, Abuja. The scoreline was enough for Ghana to qualify for the 2022 World Cup at the expense of Nigeria. Now, irate fans of the Super Eagles of Nigeria went on rampage, destroying properties after the Nigerian senior national football team failed to pick a World Cup ticket against Ghana. Nigeria's security is indeed facing dire times. To look at this, I have Biola Kazeem, a sports marketing consultant, joining me. Thank you very much for your time. I mean, the unfortunate incident at the stadium yesterday is a clear blemish on security agents, the Sports Ministry and the Football Federation. You were there live.
Yes.
What do you think caused the incident?
I think that a couple of things. I think that the first thing was that it appeared that there was a very, very strong push by those who organized the match to have a full stadium. I think that everyone felt a bit of pressure from seeing Ghana fill up their stadium in Kumasi. And they thought that, filling up the Abuja stadium would create the atmosphere necessary for the Super Eagles to have that extra push to get past Ghana, and qualify. And typically what happens when you try to do that is that the ticket gets into the hands of, in quotes, the wrong people. One of the first layers of security is moderating access. You moderate access, for instance, into entertainment events, into sports events, is pricing. You raise the price barrier to such a level that only in quote certain type of people will be able to access, those tickets and get into, whatever facility it is. Because look, if you have a 60,000 capacity stadium filled with as much as maybe 20,000, 30,000, I would say maybe miscreants or those type of people, no matter what security measures you put in place, that security measure is in danger. And so what we saw was that there was a large amount of people who access the stadium, who go into the stadium without tickets, without any form of screening, without any form of identification. And the moment that the result was not to their satisfaction. And look, football and sport triggers very visceral, very raw, very, very very basic emotions, and one of those is to get people furious and sometimes become violent. And so once the result was not a good result, and it became clear to the crowd that
what would expect that for organizers of such an event would know some of these things you mentioned. When you were there, did you see any form of crowd control? Were they maybe civil authorities that would help manage the situation at the moment? Is this a failing on the part of government or merely the sports ministry?
I think that all those who were in charge of organizing the match clearly have a lot to learn as far as putting together big events, is concerned. Asking if I saw security men, around. Oh, indeed, in the perimeter and inside the stadium, we saw security men. But security is not about lining up security men. It's about organization. It's about having a clear idea of what you want to do. And should that fail, what is your fail-safe plan? The moment the crowd started, first of all manners of people going to the stadium. There was no authentication of tickets. There was no verification of tickets. Nobody was even checking for tickets. People just trooped into the stadium. It was so poor. Access into the stadium was so poor that even those with VVIP tickets and VIP like myself could not even get into the designated areas. You were just going to walk down through Walton and whatever part of the stadium you access the stadium from, that's where you're going to watch the match from. And so we had all manners of people entering the stadium without ticket, without identification, without verification. That was the first layer. The second layer was that once the result was not good, the crowd poured into the stadium too easily. I imagine that there were some gates that ordinarily should have been locked to make sure that people cannot get into the stadium, because the way security works is that you're supposed to be adjusting your security plans per what is going on. The moment it appeared Nigeria was not going to qualify, you had to have another plan. And so once the fans started pouring towards the gate and pushing those gates open, whatever security plan you have was going to fall apart. It also didn't take too long for the security officials to start, throwing tear gas around. When those type of measures are taken, the crowd becomes more agitated. History has shown us that the crowd becomes more agitated. They feel affronted because these are people who simply want to vent. I'm not suggesting that they should have done what they did, but I think that part of security is trying to make sure that you do not aggravate a large number of people. Because in the real sense, how many of them can you hold? How many of them can you arrest? And don't forget that this is about optics. This game was on live TV all across the world. And so your first measure was to make sure that you prevent an embarrassment. The moment it appeared like some crowd were getting onto the pitch, tear gas canisters, were thrown. We started seeing tear gas go off. And what we saw was even more aggravation of the crowd, and more of them, poured into the field. And so if it was it a failing of organization? Or absolutely. The security architecture was very, very poor in terms of access into the stadium and securing those inside the stadium. More importantly for me was that when it was becoming clear that the result was not going to be good enough, somebody somewhere should have thought about the fact that this would trigger the fans and there might be encroachment, and should have adjusted those plans. That did not happen.
Unfortunately, what has happened has happened. So I guess what we can be looking at now are lessons that we can learn so that we can avoid similar occurrences in the future, and maybe what the penalties would be. Let's start with the lessons going forward when we have events like this.
The lesson going forward is for us to be absolutely clear that football in Nigeria has to attract a different set of fans. I'm sorry to say, but if you fill up a stadium with miscreants, you are going to get this type of thing.
But sorry, let me interrupt you there. But would that be fair? All Nigerians are equal. If you say some persons will get certain treatment and others don't have access to a game that they love, wouldn't you rather suggest an alternative that will allow everyone have access, but with measures to control, at least like you mentioned earlier, identify who steps into the stadium?
Look, the reality is all over the world, accessing live events costs a lot of money. It's not for everybody, and that's just the reality. So, for instance, if you wanted to watch the English national team, it's going to cost you quite a bit of money. It's not for everybody. Some people cannot afford it, so they stay at home and watch TV. That is why you have TV. If you are going to gather a large number of people into a place and you want to secure the place, the first thing you must do is to make sure that you don't allow miscreants into the stadium or whatever it is. Anywhere you have a large number of miscreants, you are going to get bad behavior. And whatever security measures you put in place will be in jeopardy or even overridden, as we saw. So yes, football might be for everybody, but it is showing on TV. And so those guys can watch back at home. Access into stadiums, access into entertainment centers, access into premium live events always cost a lot of money. Our attempts to make it cheap for everybody means that or sometimes even free, means that we always put ourselves in situations where these people who are, I would say, socially awkward, whose response to any trigger is violence, who do not have a clear understanding of the consequences of their actions, these type of people, when the results don't go their way, misbehave. It's not just in football. Okay. Anywhere you have them in large numbers.
In the interest of time, I'd like to ask you this very important question. We talk about our leaders all the time, and most of the people who behaved in the manner that we saw yesterday were young Nigerians. What worries you about such behavior from people who are wishing for a better system for them to live out their lives, and they behave in that manner and they complain against their government? What advice would you have, or what words would you give to them at this point that might, rejig their brains to understand that there are consequences for every action?
Absolutely. What I'll say is that nobody gets forward by destroying things. I mean, you can be agitated, you can be upset, you can be angry, but destroying property, killing people is not going to solve whatever problem. However bad that problem is, destroying public property, killing fellow Nigerians because you are agitated will never make anybody move forward. It will not lead to progress. And so however agitated you are, you have to constantly consider the common good. You have to consider the next man. That stadium was rehabilitated it was built for hundreds of millions of dollars. It was recently rehabilitated with millions of dollars. And just because one result did not go our way, we desecrated that stadium, destroyed that stadium. Nigeria is obviously, the stadium is going to be banned by FIFA for quite a while. Nigeria looks horrible in the eyes of the world. The consequences of this are grave. What I will say to young Nigerians all over Nigeria is that, I understand that it could be some unrest. I understand that people might not be happy. Things are quite tough. But again, venting, destroying, and killing Nigerians is not the solution. Absolutely not.
I guess that's a good place to leave it for today. Thank you very much, Biola Kazeem, sports marketing consultant. It's been a pleasure, even though the conversation was very deep. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
All right. I guess that's where we wrap things up for today. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure holding the fort for Suleiman Alade. My name is Felicity Ezewuike. Do take care.